Welcome to the Health Revolution, the show that leads you to a life of vibrant well-being. In a world full of noisy health trends, we bring you clarity through a sea of fads. We reveal the science behind the strategies that truly work. We explore physical strength, emotional resilience, and mental mastery, the keys to an enriched life. See inspiring interviews with the champions who've conquered life's challenges. Are you ready to unlock your potential to live with vitality and purpose? Then join the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, health and fitness expert, speaker, and a mom who understands. Let's embark on this transformative quest together. If you want to change the game, it all starts now. And we are delighted to have you join us today. No matter which way you're tuning in to us, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We want to stay connected to you. Also, at the bottom of your screen, there is a tab for show episode notes. Be mindful of that. There's some impactful information about today's episode, and we are getting into it. We are excited to have a conversation about a day in which has changed the lives of many. The day was January 15th, 2009, and Flight 1549 was heading from LaGuardia Airport in New York City, heading to Charlotte and then Seattle. And in the course of events, changed the history of the lives of everyone involved, and as well as the global impact it's had on the aviation community as well. Our guest today is Dave Sanderson. He was the last passenger on Flight 1549, the Miracle on the Hudson. And today we are going to have some powerful takeaways from that day that we can learn from and beyond. Take a look at this. Meet Dave Sanderson, an internationally recognized leadership speaker, author, and survivor of The Miracle on the Hudson.
Cactus 1549, turn left heading 270.
This is Cactus 1539. Hit birds through lost thrust on both engines returning back towards LaGuardia.
Tower, stop your departures. Got emergency returning.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
US Airways Flight 1549 made an emergency landing in the Hudson River near Midtown Manhattan, with all 155 passengers and crew safely rescued and no fatalities. As the last passenger to step off the plane, Dave emerged from the icy waters with not just a remarkable story, but a mission to empower others to overcome adversity and uncover their own defining moments. Today, we'll delve into his profound lessons from surviving the unimaginable and his passion for equipping others to face challenges with courage and resilience. Take us back to the day in which Thursday, January 15, 2009, that incredible day, that the Miracle on the Hudson. What do you remember vividly amongst the many memories that have come from that life-changing event?
Well, thank you for the question. It was an unbelievable day because I candidly was not supposed to be on that flight. I was scheduled on the 5 o'clock flight that evening. So I had the opportunity to get home early from a 3-day business trip. And that morning started at roughly 5 a.m. So I got out at 10 o'clock. So here's my opportunity to get home early. So I gave up a first class seat at 5 o'clock for seat 15A, flight 1549 on January 15th. So that was an amazing experience. I think a lot of people don't understand. It's sometimes that you're supposed to be places where you're not expected to be, and all of a sudden you show up, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of something that's not only happening to you, but people are witnessing all over the world, which was an amazing experience. I'm very blessed from that day to have a captain and a crew that did an amazing experience to be able to get that plane down. But like I shared with you, Adriana, there's always two parts of the story. The first part is getting down, which is give the captain all the credit. But then now you're sinking in the Hudson River, which is in the middle of winter, 36-degree water, and now you got a whole different experience. And that's when my story and the other passenger story and the crew story really came together.
What was the first indicator that things were not of the usual air travel protocol?
Well, when I heard the explosion roughly about 1 minute into the flight, I knew something had happened, but I fly so often, I thought the plane just lost an engine, so it really didn't startle me. But the moment I knew something was really going on, that wasn't going to be a positive experience, is when I heard the captain say his famous words, "This is your captain, brace for impact." And that was approximately when we were approaching the George Washington Bridge. We actually were heading straight into the bridge. So I think that was actually the first moment I realized this is not good. Something's happening that could be tragic, and I better get my act together pretty quick.
What was the vibe that amongst the passengers and even the flight crew that was in the cabin? Was there a hustle and bustle energy to just follow suit? Was there a mixture of emotions? What do you recall?
Well, one of the things I always share when I speak about this day is because no one on the plane really got out of sorts. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The only time I really heard anything is when the captain said those words, and all of a sudden you heard a command from the flight attendants: brace, brace, brace. And that's it. I think at that point, everybody was sort of checking in to make sure they had whatever they needed to do to get ready for whatever may or may not happen. It was amazing. It was so quiet. That's right. Yeah, I talked to many passengers that day. I think that's one thing that stays with every one of us. Normally you think people would be out of sorts, be yelling, screaming. I think everybody was sort of locked into what do I have to do to survive this?
And so, as the descent was happening into the Hudson, how did you process what was going on, and what were some of the things that just helped you just follow directions and just go with what was going on?
Well, when I heard that command and I looked out my window, I saw water in the bridge. So I knew something was going to happen very quickly. So I knew, number one, I need to get my ducks in a row. So the first thing I did is I had to make sure I had some identification on me. I always packed my wallet because it's always in my pocket. I didn't want it all bulging. So I always packed my wallet. So I got my wallet out and put it down into my pants, because if something happened, at least someone could be able to know who I was. And second, I started praying. I believe there's a greater being, and I started praying that greater being just, give everybody strength, especially the captain at this point in time, to get me down safely. And at that point in time is when I started checking in. And I started thanking him for being able to give me a life. And at that point, I knew that I was either going to go to a better place or I was going to have an opportunity to live. And fortunately for us, he got that thing over the bridge, because he was headed straight for the George Washington Bridge.
So, upon impact, was it something? Can you describe it? Was it something that you felt that everybody was in place? Obviously, everybody was secured at that point because they had the heads up from Captain Sully. But as it was happening, can you describe that moment of impact?
At the moment of impact, he hit it. He says roughly about 110 to 120 miles an hour. So it was an extremely hard hit. And I think everybody was bracing the best way they could, because one of the things you realize, Adriana, when you get on a plane, and I check this every time, I still fly a lot, no one pays attention. No one reads the brochure. So, at that point in time, I think some people are like, how do I brace? How do I brace? Because you didn't pay attention. So I think everybody was bracing the way they had to at that moment in time. But when we hit, it was a very jarring hit. And I know, at least from my perspective, I know at least the gentleman who was on my right at that point, because I was in seat 15A on the left, I went back and forth a couple of times. That's how jarring a hit it was. But, at that point in time, once you come to a stop, it's extremely silent. Because at that point, you don't know what's going on. But all of a sudden, you look out the window, you see water rising up the window, and you see light. So now you have to execute part two. Part two is that now I got to get out of a sinking plane in the middle of a river. And now you've just gone through a very traumatic experience. So fortunately for me, I've had the experience of my training of how to manage your mind and mindset, which comes in that's extremely important. That's one thing I really try to teach people, is how to manage your mind when all things are breaking loose around you.
And so the plane hits the water is rising. Tell us the next couple of moments in terms of, because there could be pandemonium, which we're not supposed to have in an event of a water landing. But then what was the execution like? And I know obviously you were the last passenger to leave the aircraft. Take us through those moments.
Yeah, thank you. No one lost their heads. The term I used that night with Katie Couric on CBS was a controlled chaos. where things are happening extremely quickly. So you got to pay attention. You got to be aware, but no one was out of sorts. See, and I played sports and athletics my entire life. And before we went into any game, we always had a game plan. So I knew if I survived this thing, which is game number one, can I get down? Can we get down? And I survived. I had to have a game plan. And my game plan was aisle up out. I kept saying to myself, aisle up out, aisle up out, aisle up out, because I knew if I survived, I got to be able to get out of this thing. So people are moving very quickly. And one of the things I share is you learn a lot of things very quickly, how resourceful people get, because looked back inside the cabin and I saw people walking on top of the seats to get out of the plane, because normally you have that one aisle. But now you got 150 people, passengers, that have to get out. You got to have multiple ways to get out. So also you see people walking on over the seats, but that wasn't my game plan. My game plan was aisle up out. So when I got to the aisle, things were moving very quickly. It was my time to go. And that's the moment that changed everything for me that day. That was the exact moment, because when I got to the aisle, I was going to go up and out, because I was 4 rows to that door. I knew I had a shot, but all of a sudden I heard my mom talk to me.
So how did it come to be that you were the last passenger off the aircraft? Were you assisting others? Were you, take us through your thought process in just exiting?
That was the moment when I heard my mom tell me, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And that's when I had to make a decision. Now, one of the things I really give credit to my mother and father is they made their kids, me included, make decisions when we were young that had consequences. And I could have gotten out, Adriana. I mean, that was the easy path. But yeah, I grew up in a small town where everybody took care of everybody. So instead of going out, I went towards the back of the plane. I climbed over the seats to get to the back of the plane, see if anybody needed help. Because, I knew I was okay. I knew everybody else in front of me was okay because they were moving. I didn't know anybody in the back. So I climbed over the seats, got to the back of the plane, and the water was about chest level deep because it was already submerged. And things were moving very quickly. So I got behind the last person. And I was trying to make my way out. It was very dark in the back of the plane because not only is the plane submerged, but it's late afternoon New York in the middle of the winter. So it's already getting dark. And the first light that I saw was on the right side of the plane. So after I saw the person in front of me keep going, I said, okay, there's a door, time to get out. And I went towards that door and started to get out. And all of a sudden I looked out and there was no room on the wing or the boat for me. And that's how I became the last passenger off the plane, because I had to stay in the plane for roughly 7 minutes in waist-deep in 36-degree water. I helped other people get out, but at that point I also had to hold on to the lifeboat, because the lifeboat was floating out into the Hudson. And as I mentioned earlier, no one pays attention to the instructions. That boat's actually tethered to the plane, but no one knew that, and they were floating out into the river. So that's why I had to hold on to the lifeboat for about 7 minutes, waist deep in 36-degree water, while other people were making their way on the wing to get off the wing and or the boat.
And I think that's not something that we keep in mind when we think of that moment where 36-degree temperature water in the middle of January, in the middle of winter. This is not, near the equator. This is New York. And so what helped you stay calm? Because obviously then there's the risk of hypothermia and the frigid conditions that are happening to the body. Now that there's minutes to be working with only, what helped you stay connected and not panic?
Well, thank you. I'll answer that in 2 parts. Number one, fortunately for the last several years prior to that, I was head of security for a gentleman named Tony Robbins. And one of the things that he always taught us, and especially when I was in a leadership position, is you have to have state management, how to manage your mind in times of all stress. So fortunately for me, I could call upon that resource at that moment in time. So that's how I kept focused. But I think the other part of it is, and people ask me this all the time, is how did that work out? I mean, what I was told is I had so much adrenaline. This came from a medical professional. I had so much, adrenaline going. I didn't even feel anything. I didn't feel anything until I got on the ferry, when I finally got out of the water after swimming, approximately 15 yards to get to the ferry after everybody else was gone. And all of a sudden that's when I first felt the cold, because I had so much adrenaline going. It's just like an athlete. An athlete's hard to feel. They go, 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 right? And all of a sudden they're on the sideline and they sort of let down a little bit, and that's when they start feeling those aches and pains.
And so you're on the ferry, and obviously you're getting rescued, and your thoughts after that, what was going through your mind?
Well, I went to the right. I was on the right side of the plane, So I was actually going to New Jersey because I was about 6, 7 years ago, I had the obviously privileged and honored to speak with one of the people who wrote the plan for maritime rescues in the Hudson. And part of the rescue plan was whatever side you went out, whatever closest point to shore you were, where you were going to go. I went out to right, which was facing New Jersey. I was in New Jersey. So I couldn't feel a thing. Like I said, I got so cold on that ferry. And all of a sudden, when we got to shore, there were 3 people waiting for me. There were 2 EMTs ready to help me because they called ahead because they knew that I'd been in the water. And I jumped from the American Red Cross with a blanket. And that's why I speak so fondly and work so passionately on behalf of the American Red Cross.
When was the first time you had the chance to talk to your wife and kids? I know that you're a father of 4 and you've been married for 37 years. Is it if I have that right? What was when was the first opportunity you had to talk to your family? What was that like?
Well, I lost my BlackBerry in the Hudson. I lost everything. So I didn't have any phones. I did not speak to my wife till approximately 11, 12 o'clock that night because the liaison from US Airways who came in from Pittsburgh, her name was Doreen, she let me use her cell to my wife. I didn't even know my wife knew what was going on, but I found out they got a phone call. I left a message on the voicemail right after somebody asked to let me have their phone to call and let them know that, I was in the plane crash. So they knew I survived, but they didn't know where I was at until approximately 11 or 12 o'clock that night.
And did your family know at that point that they didn't know for a time until they got confirmation? And what was it for your family? What was it like for everyone, including you, to know that you were going to be okay?
Yeah, they didn't find out till one of my kids saw me with Katie Couric that night. They were flipping channels, right? And one of my kids saw me so they knew that I survived. They knew that I survived. And that's what I think when it really hit them, because when my wife was actually taking our son to basketball practice. That's what moms do, right? Moms take kids to practices and things. And that's what my wife was actually doing when all this was going down. So my daughter's the one who got that voicemail and let my wife know that I survived, but they didn't know what was going on. By the time she got home, Adriana, ABC, CBS, and NBC had already had cameras in our front yard ready to start interviewing. And I think that was one of the most dramatic things that happened in my family because they were not prepared. They didn't know anything. And all of a sudden you got media. It's all over them. And all of a sudden she had to face the media. She was not mentally prepared or emotionally prepared for that whatsoever.
And so when you had the chance to reunite with her was when was the next time that you had a chance to reunite with your family?
The next morning, after I did all the interviews on all the TV stations, they put me on a plane back to Charlotte, and they were there right there. They had special dispensation for the TSA to come in and met me right at the gate, and that's when I first saw them. And my wife was definitely frazzled. My kids were very thankful and grateful, I know, because they were hugging me. But my wife was still had that blank stare in her face, like I don't know what's going on, right? So she was actually, I think she did an amazing job managing everything while all stuff was breaking loose, and especially in my life.
Now that's obviously you've flown since, and what has helped you overcome that you've had your takeaways from Flight 1549? What has helped you to continue on and not let a life-changing moment like that debilitate you?
Brilliant question, because what happened to me when I came back, I didn't even know, my company didn't even check in with me. I didn't even know they knew that I'd been in a plane crash. So next morning when I came back, I went by the office just to let them know that I survived. And the first question I was asked by my direct manager was, "You're going to Michigan next week, right?" And which told me a lot of things, number one. But number two, I did say yes. So that next flight was the most challenging flight that I've ever been on. It was on Delta, which I love Delta, but I was a rock star on US Airways. They didn't know me on Delta, so I was in the back of the plane. And I don't think I was freaking out, but they could tell something was off with me a little bit. And when you have something off on a plane, you get noticed. But fortunately, one of the flight attendants recognized me from one of the interviews and told the captain. And the captain actually came back, and I thought first, I was like, oh my God, am I making a disruption? I didn't know what was going on. And he just sort of calmed me down, sort of talked me through it. So, hey, everything's going to be all right. We're going to take care of you. I think I needed that flight to be able to get back, because I think one of the things that I've seen of people who go through things like I went through, even some people from 1549, still haven't got back on a plane yet. So fortunately for me, I got back that next week on a plane, which helped me dramatically helped me dramatically in my recovery and getting back, and then following up speaking that next week at my church helped me get it out. And I think that's one of the biggest things when people go through this experience, they need to get it out of their bodies, because the more you keep it in, the body starts stacking in, and the more fear that you have. So I think those two things, getting back on a plane immediately, and second, speaking and getting it out of my body, has helped me tremendously. What I call PTGS, post-traumatic growth.
We've got so much more to cover. First, we're going to take a break. Stay right there. We've got more.
So in the calm bag, it has GABA, theanine, and taurine. So theanine, which is B1, which is also in our B complex, but it also helps with the stress response levels. It also helps with the neurological transmitters in our brain. Combined with the GABA, and then you add taurine to it. Taurine is a non-essential amino acid in our body, but it's found in our heart, our brain, and our eyes. So in my personal opinion, it's very essential in our lives. But taurine has a calming effect as well. When I was battling all my AFib issues, I was taking high doses of taurine because that would help with my AFib. It helped with the palpitations I was having. And it also helped with the anxiety of having the palpitations because I knew what was going on, and so taurine helps a lot with that as well. So those three together create such a wonderful concoction that really calms people down.
Introducing Launchpad, the perfect partner to help you launch your dream project to the world. We know that time is of the essence, and we're here to help you make the most of it. With Launchpad, you'll get access to the most advanced digital tools and strategies to take your idea from a mere concept to a fully fledged success. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned pro, we have everything you need to make your mark in the world. Launchpad, your ultimate launch partner.
Leadership, speaker, author, and survivor of Flight 1549 crash, the miracle on the Hudson. And before the break, we were going through just the transition from recounting your memories and experience from Flight 1549 and the transition that you've made to continue moving on. And what I love about what you were saying, Dave, is that you obviously demonstrated an ability to continue to put one foot in front of the other and not let that derail you. One question I do have before we get into your books and all of those nuggets, it's been widely publicized that the passengers and as well as the flight crew, that there's a camaraderie and that you all have gotten together since. And can you summarize a little bit about what that looks like today?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been an amazing experience. And the way it sort of is broken down is if you went out the right side of the plane, you went to New Jersey, left side of the plane. So people on the right side really connected first. And then, I'm sure the same thing happened on the left side of the plane. And on the annual event, they have on the anniversary on January 15th, there's always an event someplace where people gather. And occasionally, there's some people that still don't want to get back with us, and that's cool, right? I mean, some people still have to process, but no, it's the person I was in the hospital with, because I was only one of the two people that stayed the night in the hospital. Barry Leonard was the other one. Barry and I become very close friends, and Barry sold his company and is now traveling the world and doing his thing because now he's got a bigger meaning in his life. So I think it's one of the greatest things about we have a connection that will never go away.
And you bring up a good point in that your takeaway from this is you continue to use your voice. And talk to us about that transition from not only experiencing that, but leveling up your voice in speaking to others in terms of leadership and then how you became an author. I want to talk about that.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Number one, I had never had the intention of speaking. That wasn't my goal. But as I mentioned earlier, I was head of security for a gentleman named Tony Robbins for many years. And Tony was my mentor. Great interest in helping me through this. He was the only one who actually called me that night in the hospital. And he and I had about a 3-hour talk when I was in California. He coached me on the impact I could have and what I could use out of this to be able to impact other people's lives. Speaking was the first sort of pathway that I could use. That's how I began speaking. It wasn't because of I really was a passion. It's because I could start impacting people's lives. Because what happened, Adriana, is happened actually the second week after the plane crash when I first spoke. And this lady who was at the event, I was at a church and about 500 people. It was a big event. I didn't even know what I was doing. I'll be very candid. I had nothing. I was just speaking from the heart, which is number one thing you got to do, speak from the heart. But this lady came up to me, Adriana, and said, I was questioning if there's a God. I don't believe in miracles, but you're a physical evidence there is a God. He does miracles. Thank you. And that was the moment I realized that I had impacted somebody, because this lady, who was probably in her late 80s at that point in time, all of a sudden saw something, had sort of a light bulb go off, that, there are miracles. There is something bigger out there than I believed in. And all of a sudden I impacted somebody. And that's what set me on the journey of what I'm doing right now.
So I want to talk about your first of several books that you've written. The first one is From Turmoil to Triumph, and talk a little bit about setting the scene and the intentionality for us, the readers, to our takeaways from the book.
Well, thank you. This book has a special meaning because I wrote every word of this book. I didn't have anybody else's input. So this is very personal for me, because this book really helped. People always ask, well, how did you get to where you're at? How did you be able to do all these things? So what I really want to do is document how the mindset that I had, and how does somebody who has basically zero experience do something like this. So this book takes me back, and I take the readers back to pretty much the day I graduated from college, and my dad told me I had to get out of the house in 30 days. And I tell that story because the essence of that story is my third stop in my first job was here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was working as a second assistant restaurant manager at a place called Howard Johnson. And I knew nothing about restaurants or hotels, but I was out of the house. Like my dad said, you got to get out of the house and get a job. But what happened was there's a gentleman who came into my life that I didn't even know at that moment would have the impact he did. His name was Bill. At that point in time, he was in 1984, he was 77 years old. I found out over several discussions he owned over 80 movie theaters and restaurants in the Carolinas since the 20s. And on December 24th, 1984, he took me on and asked me if he could mentor me. For 13 years, he mentored me. So this book's about those lessons, those lessons, key lessons, strategies he was teaching me over that time period that helped me get to that day of January 15, 2009, when it was really revealed how that book was. My mother and father taught me the same things, which I think all of our parents teach us these things, but you realize your parents are too close. Sometimes you need that third party, somebody else to give you that insight to maybe look at a different direction. And that's why if you look at the cover of this book, I was still on that Tony Robbins wrote, said this book, he wouldn't be where he's at unless he had a mentor named Jim Rohn. That's how important mentorship is in somebody's life. So I encourage, this book's really to encourage everybody, find a mentor, whether it's me or somebody else or you. Find somebody who can leave those nuggets for that next generation. That's how this book really came about. That's why this book is so important. It brings you up to January 15, 2009.
And so the time period in which he mentored you was how long? What was that time that you spent with him?
1984 to 1997 until he was passed away. And that was very critical. I'm glad you asked that question, because in 1997, he asked me to come by his office. It was actually May of 1997. And he wanted to share two things with me. At that point in time, he was 90 years old. He told me, he said, number one, I let you know I got lung cancer. And he smoked unfiltered Camel since the 1920s. So it wasn't shocking, but still surprising. But what happened was he, at that point in time, he went over to his desk and he got to pull all these papers out. And he laid them on my right leg. As I was sitting, I said, what's this? And he goes, these are the handwritten notes I wrote in 1929 on how I was going to be successful. This is what I've been teaching you. I want to give this to you, but you have to promise me one thing. I said, what? He goes, do not let this die with you. And that's what was my motivation to be able to do what I'm doing right now. Is I'm fulfilling the promise I made in 1997, because he taught me lessons and nuggets that you'd have to pay hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for. He saw something in me, and that's why in the last chapter of this book, I write about why did he pick me, and there was a reason he picked me, because he could have picked a lot of different people to leave these things with, but he saw something. And I think that's what happens to all of us. Somebody sees something in you bigger than you, and all of a sudden you need to take that person and be able to take that person and help them have them help you. So that's what this whole book's about.
And that's incredible. And what's the one thing that you want readers to know, the one theme about this book?
Yeah, the one thing about this book is it's impaired on you to find somebody to leave what you've learned to somebody else. This is not a woulda, coulda, shoulda. This is a must. So I encourage, not only encourage, but implore you, do not let time pass away. Find somebody to leave your nuggets with. And if you got to write them down, that's fine. But if you can have that verbal discussion and leave that with them so they can leave it on to the next generation. And what I do and everybody that I coach, Adriana, is that's part of what they write in the commitment, is they're not going to only take what I teach them over the coaching period I'm with them, but they're going to also take this and teach it to somebody else. And that's something I always implore somebody to do.
And so this is the first book that you've written. And then your second book is titled Moments Matter. And obviously by the cover, this segues into one of the most impactful chapters of your life. Talk to us about the decision that you made to write this book and some of your personal takeaways that maybe you didn't discover until the completion of this book.
Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't really, thinking about this book until I had an experience, and that experience started right here in my office where we're sitting today. I got a phone call from my wife, a neighbor down the street. Two elderly ladies needed some help. They had their TV was broken, and she asked me if I'd go down and help them. I said, of course. See, I grew up in a small town. You'd help everybody, right? That's just what you do, especially older people. So as I fixed the TVs, they asked me if I stayed for milk and cookies. And of course, I love milk and cookies, right? I mean, who's going to say no to milk and cookies, especially a couple of ladies who could probably cook pretty well. So I was sitting there looking in their parlor. We have things called parlors down south. It's a sitting room. And I was looking at some of their books, and it had World War II history. And I love World War II history. So what happened was when they came out, I asked them where they got this book because I wanted a copy of it. They said, because we were in there. And they rolled up their sleeves, Adriana, and showed me the letters and numbers in their arm. And they survived the concentration camp. And for the next 2 hours, they told me everything about how they survived a concentration camp and how all the moments in their life mattered. I came back here, I was blown away. So I went back to my credenza, which is right behind me, opened up and started. All of a sudden I found these notes from Bill. And I'm like, something's telling me something. I got to write this book. And that's why the book's called Moments Matter, because in that book, I lay out what hadn't only happened that day, but these 12 skill sets that I learned over my life that I had to implore. And the one that really came around to this, there's a lot of them, about persistence and perseverance and faith. But the one I really talked about, really hit me hard, is the ability. And this is one thing I had a conversation with Tony Robbins about. We had the same conversation as resourcefulness. How in times of stress, when all things are hitting the fan in your life, whether it's a business situation, personal, physical health, it doesn't matter. The person with the most uses the most resources, who doesn't have the resources, use those resources most effectively, all of a sudden becomes a person who's a leader, who can be resourceful with those resources. And that day, as we're going down the plane, I didn't have a lot of resources except my mind. And this is the greatest resource you have, is your mindset, how you manage your state. That's actually the most important chapter. At least from my perspective, the most important chapter in the book. If you're hitting, everybody's going to hit that moment. I call it a personal plane crash moment, where everybody's going to have a moment. Something's going to happen. Might be a car crash, maybe a lost child or family member. Something's going to happen. It's that moment when you have to be resourceful and start managing your mindset to be able to get through it and help other people get through it.
I want to ask you, what was your takeaway from the experience, Flight 1549? What was, as you reflect on it, and it was the framework for this book, and your just things to share, nuggets, what was the one thing that was a takeaway for you?
Thank you for asking that question, because of course there are a lot of takeaways, but the biggest takeaway I learned a couple of weeks after the plane crash when I was on Good Morning America with some other passengers in the crew, and we were done. We're sitting in the green room just talking, right? And all of a sudden, one of the passengers got very emotional. I would say loud speaking. Let's say it that way. He started speaking loud. And the first thing I thought about Adriana was, what's wrong with him? We survived the plane crash and we're on national TV, right? I mean, life's pretty good. All of a sudden, I found out later that he was going through a divorce and he lost his job because of the plane crash. So what he associated to the plane crash was devastation. What I associated was a blessing. And that's when I realized how many times have I judged somebody that quickly before I knew their story, their backstory. And all of a sudden, that was the biggest takeaway is if I could just be less judgmental, because you had 155 people on this plane that didn't know about each other or care about each other, who pulled together in a matter of a couple minutes to do something that had never been done in the history of aviation. How does that happen? And that's I think one of the most critical lessons out of this whole thing is it doesn't matter if you don't know them or if you pull together and check your egos at the door, you can accomplish anything. And that's what I really talk to businesses about.
And this is such an incredible moment, of course, but this is not the only book that you've written. We've got a third book that we'd love to highlight. Talk a little bit about The Limitless Life and the meaning behind it and what set the stage for you to write this book.
Yeah, so for the last couple of years, I was being asked, well, what have you learned out of this experience, right? And I started articulating things. Also, I started documenting. What is the biggest lessons and strategies I learned after the plane crash? So this is what The Limitless Life is revealed. This is what I talk about is these big lessons and strategies that I've learned after going through a traumatic life event. There's things that you learn. So these are the things you learn. And one of the biggest things that I share in this book, I share really 12 key strategies that I learned. But one of the things that's helped me dramatically, not only in my personal life, but also especially in my business, is uncertainty creates opportunity. And, when you're going through a plane crash, it's total uncertainty. And how you manage your mind, if you manage your mind correctly and manage your state, all of a sudden other opportunities start formulating. And once you find other opportunities, that's when your life gets to be transformed. And that's the biggest lesson and strategy I talk about. How you can take uncertainty, embrace it, find an opportunity to transform your life.
I love that phrase because we've just gone through that globally 4 years ago in the form of COVID and the sky falling, so it seems. And so some of the commonalities of this, what can you tell us are characteristics that continue to help people thrive and elevate from moments of despair? What are some additional things that maybe we don't realize because we're just thinking about the here and the now and we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, when we were going through the pandemic, it's exactly what happened. It's total uncertainty. And some people found opportunity and some people didn't, unfortunately, right? But one of the things that I write about and I talk about is one of the ways you do this is you got to understand nothing is permanent. Just we found out COVID wasn't permanent. So you got with the mindset of this too shall pass. This is one of the chapters I write in the book is about how you have to look at it from a bigger perspective, that this is just a point in time. And if you take it as a point in time, then this will pass. And it's called, I acknowledge one of the people who's one of my coaches, Dan Sullivan. He talks about the gap and the gain. It is that most people live in that gap where it's like they wish they could have done this. They're not there yet. They get down, and they're not being able to do it. Where most people who thrive when they find opportunity is they live in the gain, which means look how far I've come, look how far I've advanced. And instead of looking at the gap or where they're not at, they're looking at the gain, what they have, and all of a sudden the mind starts opening up and opportunities start coming to them. So one of the biggest things I would share is, remember, this too shall pass. You haven't got this far in life without some things happening in this past, whether it's a money issue, a health issue, a family relationship issue, a spiritual issue. Those issues will pass. And I think that's one of the biggest ways that you can embrace that uncertainty to create opportunity.
I think that's a powerful lesson for all of us. And oftentimes in life, it's real easy to just be stuck or appear as though we're stuck and then focus on that versus being able to continue to press on and then trust the process in the response in which we can generate a new opportunity. And as you said, so this is pretty powerful. And we have so much more to cover. First, we're going to take a commercial break. Stay put. you so much for watching The Health Revolution. Our show is growing, and it's all thanks to viewers like you. No matter how you found us, please hit the subscribe button so we can stay connected and continue to deliver amazing content to you.
Hi, I'm Adriana and welcome to Fit Bites. Did you know that 67% of the workforce sits for 4 hours or more at a time? Sitting for long periods can take a toll on your body, increasing the risk of back pain, poor posture, weight gain, and even serious conditions like heart disease and diabetes. The solution? Move more. Stand up every 30 minutes and take a quick stretch or walk around. Incorporate simple desk exercises like seated leg lifts or shoulder rolls to keep your muscles active. Even standing while on phone calls or using a standing desk can make a big difference. Now, when you have time, add movement into your day with brisk walks, yoga, or strength training. Now, these activities can counteract the negative effects of sitting and improve your overall health. Remember, small changes add up. Your body is designed to move, so break up those long sitting sessions and stay active throughout your day. Stay tuned for more Fit Bites with Adriana.
Our guest today, Dave Sanderson, he's an internationally recognized leadership speaker. He's also an author of 3 amazing books. And then also he is the survivor of Flight 1549 crash, Miracle on the Hudson. And Dave, before the break, we were talking about the different takeaways from your books that we as the reader can learn from. And I'm curious to find out more from you about what it means to, in your words, create a life brand. How do you help others create a life brand? And what are some things that we can do that can set that stage up so that we can use that to be successful?
Well, thank you for asking that. One of the things that I've learned in my personal journey is, I took a test years ago called a Colby assessment, which helped me understand how I think. So when I work with people with their brand or their business or whatever I'm doing with them, first thing I do is I give them a Colby assessment so I can understand how they put these things together. What's their driving force? And then once we start to look at the driving force, we look at what I call, the magic formula, P, which is called like your purpose. We got to understand what is your mission, what is your purpose. Then we add on to that, right, the communication, right? Or can we communicate with ourselves, number 2. Then we have to take massive action. So when I'm helping somebody develop their life brand or their focus, we look at P, purpose, plus communication, taking massive action. But then the real thing that I learned from my mentor, Bill, Adriana, this was a secret sauce to me. And I think this is a secret sauce for anybody who's gotten to someplace in life. It's called, you time to pull all that together and multiply that, called the RA. What is the right associations? See, people get networked all the time and they network with people, that's great, but only the right people to network with. So I show people how to get the right associations. Take all this and then use that to get the right associations and then expand your world. And then you can develop your brand. Then you can develop, what do I stand for? What's my purpose? What's my mission? And how am I going to communicate that to the world?
What are some of the audience members that you've had in the variety of different speaking platforms that because you are one of the top speakers that are out there, you've been named one of the top international speakers. Talk about some of audience members some of the backgrounds that you have seen, and then in talking with them before and after when you've presented your nuggets.
It's amazing because, as you know, when you get the opportunity to travel the world, you see so many different cultures and so many different backgrounds of people. But it really comes back to when people come to see me. Number one, they want to be inspired. They want to walk away. It's like, wow, I had never heard how something like this can happen. If it can happen to him, can it happen to me? And the second thing I find out is pretty much, with a few exceptions, people have flown to get to the events that I am at. So they want to tell me about their experiences on a plane. So I get the opportunity to share some insights with them on what I would do or how they could not only improve their experience, but be more aware on a plane. So it's really interesting as I travel the world. Different cultures have different, of course, backgrounds, but it really comes down to those 2 things: inspiration, and they also really want to understand. So how do you stay aware and keep your eyes open? Because one of the things that one of my the person I believe in the most is Jesus Christ. And one of the things he said to his disciples in that last moment is stay awake.
Groups that you've had a chance to connect with, and with the variety of different audiences that you've had, what are some unique groups or industries or just populations that it's been a real treat to connect with them and to have that servitude in using your voice to let them see the bigger picture?
Well, currently, really, I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs and sales teams. But some of the groups I've really enjoyed is, number one, first responders, because they get it. They're the ones who are going in there, and they're the ones who are going to be in the middle of all this muck while everybody's running out. They're running in. And the second one is, which I just about 4 years ago really got close to, is the military. Because I don't know if you know this, but every summer I swim with the Navy SEALs and Special Operators to raise money to help them reduce the suicide rate, which is currently at 23 people in the military commit suicide a day. I was like blown away. I can't understand it. So I love being with the military, not only supporting them, but helping them as they start transitioning out, because that's when they're the most vulnerable. When they go from a structured situation to an unstructured situation, and they have nobody. Yeah, you have a team behind you, and over here, you don't have a team.
And so I love the fact that you've connected with first responders and military members. What are some things that maybe we don't realize as the general public who is not in that role? What are some things that you've learned that would be helpful for us to understand to better support our first responders and military?
Yeah, thank you. Because like I mentioned, what really drew me to this experience with the military and first responders is the suicide rate. It's out of control. And, like I average 23 a day in the military. But first responders, I speak at a lot of first responder conferences, and they're at risk as much as military. But they're the ones that have to see this gruesome things that they have to be involved with every day, or they're on the line every day. So they come home, and then they get a hard time to manage their minds to come down from that experience. So I have the opportunity to speak with them about how I started working through this and how I started doing some different things, and I talk about the meaning you attach to something produces the emotion of your life, and emotion's your life. So let's help people understand how they can change the meaning of something that from devastation to a blessing. So I think that's a lot that's going on with the military and first responders, that they've gone through that devastation in their personal life and their military life and first responder life. How can they translate that and help other people who are going through a very similar situation?
What would you say to the audience, the TV viewer who's watching this, and they say, I just don't know where to start. I'm feeling stuck. I'm feeling defeated, and I just need to see the light at the end of the tunnel. What would be some quick practical steps, one or two, that would get the ball rolling in the right direction?
Well, first thing I would do is, number one, start listening to books. Start listening or reading books. That's the number one thing you can do, is to do something quick. But that's nice, at least that does one thing. It helps you take an action. But the second thing is you have to get around groups, positive groups. And that's what Bill did for me back in 1985. He told me if I was really going to improve myself and get myself going in the right direction, I need to be working on my personal development, which meant seminars, books. Back then we had things called audio cassettes. Now you have digital. So the next thing I would do is make sure you're around people. Put yourself in situations, whether it's a chamber of commerce, a church environment, whatever you may believe in. Get around people. And third, let's go speak. Tell people about your experiences, because everybody's got a story. Well, I don't have anything to say. Well, you know what? You got this far in life. There's something you've learned that somebody else needs to listen to. And you can do that to a chamber of commerce or a Rotary Club. They're looking for speakers all the time. So now you get getting it out of your body, being able to tell your story. You know what? Yeah, you have to work on it. Yeah, it's not going to be elegant the first few times. But you know what? At least you're taking action and getting it out of your body. And now somebody may hear you and say, you know what? I've been there. Can you help me? And all of a sudden, you focus on the big thing that I talk about over anything else. You show gratitude. See, grace is fueled by gratitude. And the more gratitude that you have, the more thanks that you give, the more gratitude you have, the more gratitude you have, the more grace that you get, and the more grace that you get. So you start really exploding and growing your life to be able to impact somebody else. So it all starts with giving thanks, which means showing gratitude to something or somebody. And I think those are the 4 or 5 things that I would first do with somebody who's maybe in a challenge situation.
Very powerful. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. Author and passenger on flight 1549, Miracle on the Hudson. Dave, where can our audience find you in the virtual space?
Well, thank you very much. I always encourage people to go to LinkedIn first because that's where I drop my new content every week. Every Monday, I drop some new content out of some things that I just learned and put it together for people. That's number one, LinkedIn. So you see here, hire Dave Sanderson at LinkedIn. That's the best way to number one. Number two, my website, because my website, we put everything out on the website. We're very transparent. We put all of our books. I also publish my own magazine called Moments Matter Magazine, which I also share other people's story of their significant moments. And you can get that on my website at davesandersonspeaks.com. And then my team, as you and I were talking about, encouraged me to do more with the Instagram. So I also have an Instagram handle. I think it's Dave Sanderson Speaks. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, or even ideas that you would like for me to explore on your behalf.
What do you have going on what's next on the horizon for you? What do you have going on as we're entering 2025?
Well, thank you very much. I have a big mission this year because as I mentioned earlier in the show about how my mentor gave me what he gave me back with his notes. And I made a commitment to him in 1997 that I would not die with it. I would leave with somebody else. So the big thing we got going next year is I'm going to take 40 people through the same experience that I had with my mentor over a 1-year period, over a 12-month period, to be able to immerse them in these lessons and strategies that I was so blessed to get, plus some additional things around to be able to do it likewise. So that's our big, big focus. And the thing that we're going to announce, it's not public just yet, and the date, but we'll be doing our first live event. And we're going to be doing that first live event. I'll be sponsoring here in Charlotte at the Aviation Museum where the plane is, and we'll give the people who attend a personalized experience of US Airways 1549, along with a lot of other great content we'll be doing that day. So that's in our planning. So those are really the two big major things we're doing this year, in addition to speaking around the world.
That sounds incredible. One last thing I wanted to ask you is, what is the one message you want to leave our viewers today?
Is take a chance, take a risk. Bet on yourself. And I think that's a lot of people are afraid to go make a mistake. The only way you can grow is by making mistakes, and because you got to see failure in a different light. Failures only get your chance to practice your technique and perfect your performance. It's not negative feedback. You got an opportunity to practice. So bet on yourself first. Because I bet if you bet on yourself first, that you will probably say, you know what, I have a bigger mission than working for somebody else's mission. Because I'll leave you with this. There's 4 freedoms that we're all looking for right now. First freedom is the freedom of time. People won't be able to do what they want to do when they want to do it. Second is the freedom of money. Being able to do what I want to do, have the resources to do it. Third is the freedom of what's called mission or purpose. I want to work for my mission, not somebody else's mission. But the fourth freedom is the one I really was driven to, freedom of relationship. What that means is I want to be able to work with people that I really want to work with. I don't want to work with people I don't like. So last thing I would leave is bet on yourself, because focus on those 4 freedoms. What one of those 4 freedoms do you really want? And find a mentor, whether it's me or Adriana or somebody else, who can help you get to that freedom what I call compressed decades into days.
Dave Sanderson, this has been an incredible experience to spend some time with you, internationally recognized leadership speaker, author, and survivor of the Flight 1549 Miracle on the Hudson. Thank you so much for your time, energy, and your golden nuggets. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be with you, Adriana.
And for all our viewers, you can find us on the web. Our website is thehealthrevolutiontv.com. There you can subscribe to our newsletter. You can also send us an email for any show ideas that you would love for us to cover. Upper left-hand corner of your screen, you'll find our QR code that if it's easier for you to grab quickly. And then as always, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you can find us on on E360 TV every 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's all the time that we have. Until next time, take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.